Welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome, and welcome to our Friday night special here at Focus on Liberia. And we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Anthony C.A. in the late night edition of our program here at Focus on Liberia. We got something very, very special, something so dear to my heart, and I just hope it is dearest to your heart. It is called culture. It is that we makes up who we are as a people. Minus our culture, I don't know who we are anymore. You want to pay attention to this very, very interesting topic, which has to do with culture. Sometimes I try to say the power of culture, but it may not be. But actually, culture is what makes up who we are. To discuss the very, very special topic, I have a gentleman here comfortably seated in studio who has joined me from all the way Australia, and you don't want to miss this conversation. The brother has done some research, and he's here to provide some basic but detailed understanding of culture and how culture is important, how we can use culture as a tool for national development. Focus on Liberia. This is where you want to be. At this time, I will welcome my guest. His name is Mr. Mohamed Dukuly. Mr. Dukuly, welcome to Focus on Liberia. I am happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, brother Anthony. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And I think it's a bright, a wonderful day here in Australia. We're in a Saturday now, past 3 p.m. in Sydney City. Thank you.
Wow. So it is 3 p.m., a little past 3 p.m., but 12 minutes after 3 in Sydney, Australia. That is good. How's the weather there so far?
Weather here in Sydney today is great. It was raining a little bit in the morning. The rain has ceased, and the sun is shining now a little bit. Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's cool. It's quite different from what happened last week when we have for the 3-degree heat.
Okay. That is good. Before we get into our conversation, COVID-19 is the most talk about pandemic now. How is it down there in Australia?
We're just hearing on the news today, they've eased a restriction somehow, where for some states have reopened to inter-travels, and some states will do that Monday. But for now, things are taking a very easy way here for now. Now, they also encouraging us to wear masks if possible, but the serious restrictions we used to have before is no more there. We don't have lockdowns. It just more or less encouraging us to wear masks and keep our distance, and just for your own safety. Yeah. For full interstate travels, probably within the next 1 week or two, we'll see full interstate travels.
All right. Well, thank God for that little encouraging news there.
Really
we just hope, we just hope that the good news will continue to filter in everywhere so that we can get a break from this deadly disease. Focus on Liberia. Anthony C.A., your host in this late night edition of Focus on Liberia. As always, we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. I have my guest comfortably seated, Mr. Dukuly, joining us from all the way Sydney, that is Australia, and you want to be here. We are discussing culture, what makes us who we are. Let's get to it, my friend. The man, Mohamed Dukuly. What is your life journey, my friend? Let my audience get to know you a little bit before we try to break this topic apart.
Mohamed Saleh Dukuly, where do I start from? Okay, I hail from a town called Tusu in Kwaduboni district. I was born in Swamaka district of Bomi County, where people usually call on the Bupulu Road. I grew up in Bomi Hills. I had my primary education in Bomi Hills. I moved to do my junior high school education in Kakata, Majubi County. I attended the Islamic training school in Kakata, and from there My early high school days, I spent that in Booker Washington Institute in the auto mechanic department. Then after the war, there was interrupted schooling. In the late 90s, I moved on to Nigeria, where I continued my studies, completed the Bachelor of Education. History and Islamic study teaching became my primary focus subject. And I moved to Australia here in 2005, and I work in the welfare sector. I ended up with master's degree in social work. Since then, I've been working in the social work field, mainly during training, capacity building, and some therapy. That is it. That's one part of the journey. The other part of the journey is, since then we've been in community leadership. I'm just the should I say the outgoing federal leader for the Australian community in Australia.
That is the Liberian or community in Australia, right?
The Federation of Liberian Communities in Australia at the federal level. And before then, I served as the president for my state as a state leader in New South Wales. We usually call it the most populous state in Australia.
Oh, wow.
So that's been a journey so far. And I'm very actively involved in my local activities. And I mean, local tribal activities, I'm heavily involved in it. Trying to connect and do what they call bridging social capital building. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Well, folks, you have it there. This gentleman, has had a very wonderful journey as a young man, and you heard from him. Excellent story there. That's something that we can all relate to, as we all have our own life journey. But our topic, culture, how you develop this interest in this topic, before I can ask you my first question. I mean, how did you get to like this topic so much? Why is about it that kind of drive you?
That's a very interesting question. When I started working in the welfare sector in Australia, one of the first jobs I really enjoyed working in was the cultural transition project officer. Transition project officer. Okay. And the purpose of that project was to help newly arrived refugees at the time who were mainly coming from Africa and some other part of Middle East, to help them go through their cultural transition process smoothly in Australia. Right. And I did that job for about 8-9 years, and I became really interested. As I worked with people, I started observing, what is it about people's culture that facilitates a smooth integration? Okay. Or what is it about people's culture that inhibits their smooth integration? What is holding them back? In every discussion you go to, you find someone at the extreme end talking about, this is our culture, this is how we want to do it. And because of holding onto that culture in misinterpreted ways, people started getting in trouble with Child Protection Agency, domestic violence, and even the way we go about our normal things in Australia. And as I started engaging outside of Australia, I found that it's the same thing all over the place. I have a show recently on a platform called Grand Konya. It's a platform with the sub-region, people who speak my traditional language. And we have it there. And it's the same issues we talk about, cultural transition. How do you understand culture and apply it in a way that you can become functional members of a society?
Interesting.
So I developed the interest in that.
Interesting.
I spoke to people from the West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, went to Middle Easterns, I went to Asians. I just started. So they were I derived the interest from.
Wow, excellent. I mean, you kind of sparked my interest already. I mean, as you were explaining, I was just thinking about my own transition, moving here, a village boy, learning in America. I mean, I had this mindset that this place was all milk and honey. But let's leave it there. Let's get to the topic here. Folks in cyberspace, focus on Liberia. This is a Friday night edition of our show here, Focus on Liberia. And we are discussing culture, which embodies who we are as a people. We have a brother here with unique experiences to help us understand these issues surrounding culture. So let's go into it. Culture. What is culture, and can culture actually be defined?
Very good. To just give you a little bit of, I don't know how to call it, to say that whatever I'm going to say about this culture, it may have some concepts, some theories, some concepts or theoretical background underpinning what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to make it very practical. This is going to be based on my practical experience and practical observation.
Okay.
So I stand to be corrected, and hopefully we all can grow out of this to a better understanding of what culture is. Now, so far from my work in the sector, so far, I can safely say, from my understanding, that you cannot define culture with one definition. Very difficult. Whatever definition you give culture, you leave something out. Now, you see, when I'm about to talk, I saw you sitting like this. You leaned forward, paying attention. That itself is a culture.
What makes it a culture?
Or you make a culture is an expression of a particular norm in your own context.
So then why you say culture cannot be defined? Because the expression that I just showed, I know you explain it, but why is it about it that you are saying it cannot be defined?
I'm describing it. I can't define it. So there's a difference between when you describe something, you go to the nitty-gritty. You highlight the characteristics, the components, what and what makes it what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And you are saying it cannot be defined because if one attempts, some things will be left out, and then you will not be doing justice to that.
Very good. It cannot be easily defined. So some things you just describe them.
Yeah. So I'm going to push you here. Why is it that it cannot be defined? There are a lot of things that can be defined. Why is it about culture for which it can be defined? I know I'm asking you the same question, but I have my reason.
All right, you let's just put it to test. Give me a definition. Let's see. Let's critique it and see whether it actually captures everything what culture is.
All right. I agree with you. I don't want to go there. Let me progress. So you said culture can only be described.
It's difficult to be defined. Yeah, it can be described.
Yeah, it's difficult to be defined, but it can be described. So how come it is difficult to define, but it can possibly be described? Why?
Even when you're speaking to someone, something you want to say, you don't need a word for it. You can just describe it, right? I mean this, I mean that, I mean that. So well, that's what I'm talking about. Description.
Okay. When you started speaking, you saw me paying attention attentively. Yeah. And not only that, I have given you my attention was accompanied by my expression. I laid back, I came like this. So you are saying that can only be described.
Yeah, I was describing that. I was describing that to you. To easily put that into words to say what that culture is in that particular context will be very difficult for me.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't easily describe that for you. That's why even sometimes you have some feeling, you have some experiences, you can't name it. You can just describe it. Then people put their ideas together and develop a concept in their mind about it. Some people say culture is a way of life. Yes, it's a way of life. Yeah, but is that enough? Way of life? What about the symbols? The flowers, the flower pot you have at home, where you place it is a culture. It's a culture that influencing how you place the flower in your place. Who told you have to put table in the middle of the room, in a certain room? It's culture that influencing you to do that. How do you capture that all of that into a way of life? So this is why I agree with those people we learned from who said to start describing culture, you first of all talk about the components. What culture is made of? Culture is made of three major components. It's made of symbols, which you can go into in details. You can't finish it now. Symbols, and the symbols could be, a lot of symbols. If I came on here today with the cross on my neck, you won't even ask me, right?
Yeah, I won't ask you. I will know that you are a Christian, or if not a Christian, you're somebody who think that having to be a Christian.
All right, okay. So it's a symbol. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
even the language you speak in is part of symbol. You just put in the words together. There's a symbol we can hear. You just put in words together. You say it. If you and I would not speak, if I start speaking Mandingo to you now, you see my mouth, my lips moving, but you don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So symbol. They realize how is it designed. Even the donut we used to have how they designed symbols. I remember back home in the 80s, we used to go on a cassava farm. You passing about on somebody's farm, they put a little stick like this, they put a red thread on something and put it in the middle.
Right.
It's simple. It's telling you don't try it.
And what they're trying to communicate something to you.
Something to you. So that's part of culture, symbol. So people ascribe to that. They value that. That's part of it. That's one part of culture. Second part of culture is values and beliefs.
Okay.
Culture.
Values. Go into detail with the value and beliefs.
Yeah.
I mean, I know by values you mean that things that people hold dear and hold onto have to be part of the values. So, what are some values that you know of that make up a culture?
You could when you have a belief. Let's say for example, when somebody has a very liberal society. Okay. And they have that belief. One of the values would be for someone to be autonomous in our society, independence, individuality has that belief. Now, the belief we have, the African beliefs are we together and we do this together. We that attachment and things. We find that some of the values we have is collectivism. So the belief and the values go together. Yeah, some of the values we may have. If I give you something on my left hand now, and we frown somehow, it cut across.
Culture?
Men of our, for some of the context we are in, we coming from. For example, you greet me, you come happily, you greeting me, and then I just, how you doing? I give you my left hand, all these things. You're gonna feel somehow. So those people who have a belief, especially from some communities like the Kulangu district people, so other people who are Muslims in Liberia, you do something with your left hand, that will be they don't appreciate that because certain belief about that. So values are there. The values are things that we ascribe to, and they're very very important to us. Now those ones are different from norms. So that's the third part of the third category component of culture, norms.
Okay.
So we have symbols, values and beliefs, and norms.
Norms.
Now for the norms is the one that is very is a lot of it and impact everything we do and how we do it is some way or the other, some aspect of norms there. Now the norm has three parts as well.
Before you get to the parts of the norms, give me, if possible, a definition, or just tell me what norms are, or what make a norms, or what are norms.
Okay. Norm is the social expectation.
Okay.
That is considered to be practiced or accepted by majority of the people in a given context.
All right. For example,
then some expectations can be very less, can be based on preference. Some expectation is based on compulsion that you have to do. Now some expectation don't even go near there. Now those things I've talked about are the one to call it folklores.
Right.
Yeah, the folkways. Folkways are social preferences. Say for example, you dress up in Liberia, you wear the hat.
Right.
Nobody gonna tell you look at it better, whatever. It's some people may frown, some people may not frown.
Right.
But certain places you do that, they're gonna look at you. What is this? You can wear the suit and you wear hat on top. Come from Africa, it wouldn't look strange. But if you come from a different culture, you do that, it may look strange to them.
Right.
Nobody's gonna harm you. But however, that is about folkways. Now, next to folkway is mores. These are things about morality, the social requirement. These are about morality. There are some cultures we hear somebody can marry their sister, and they're proud of that, right? And they stand up and talk about it. And some people actually come to defend them. In the culture we come from, in Liberia context, say I'm going to marry my sister, probably you may not sleep that night.
It's unacceptable in our Liberian culture, for sure. Yeah. So does that mean in other cultures? Are you trying to say in other cultures that is acceptable, right?
No, I'm just trying to tell you, culture is contextual.
Okay.
Culture is contextual.
Okay.
Some things that you accept, and some people don't accept that.
Right.
Culture is a contextual, and it varies from place to place. Yeah. Some things you hold big on, and other people don't hold big on that.
All right. Mr. Dukuly, earlier you talk about the symbols. So I want to know, are these symbols some are cut across all culture, and are there differences culture to culture?
Yeah, some symbols cut across all cultures. For example, religious symbols. Everybody who practices our religion cut across. The cross may not, so meaning where you go, people will see that to be something. If I dress up in a gown now where the mama, people wear come from Mecca, if I wear that, you'll see, this guy's a Muslim guy. Okay, although in some places there are Christian, very staunch Christian in Palestine who dress the same way, this way. But majority of people will believe, first of all, that this is a Muslim thing.
Right.
So you see, that's one of the key things about describing culture. Is majority of people ascribe to. You don't find something where 100% everybody ascribe to. But large portion of the people ascribe to it. Then become normal. Like before, everybody used to smoke. Smoking was cool, isn't it? You go to club, smoking was very cool. Now it's abnormal.
So will you say, if we're looking at those characteristics, and sorry for my, maybe I'm using the wrong words here. If you look at the characteristics of culture and you talk about norms, you talk about symbols, are there some of those you will say, okay, these are more? What I'm trying to get to you is, if we look at symbols, will you say symbol constitute most of what culture is? Or is there a way, it's not a way to knowing that?
Okay. You want to say which part of these three components have a greater impact on culture? Usually,
greater impact
values and beliefs. Values and beliefs. What is in the social context or psychosocial context? It said your thoughts produce your feelings and behavior.
Okay.
Your thoughts produce your feelings and behavior. So whatever you value up there, you're going to give a good credence to that. Whatever you don't value, you're not going to give credence to that. So the value is very important.
All right. So values, according to our guest here, very, very important. Like he said, he gave an example of, there are certain things that symbol that cross culture. Some people dress here, and the way we dress, anybody can dress like that. And and there's no way you're gonna know about value, kind of the one that really is more like the defining characteristic of culture. Focus on Liberia. Anthony here hosting. This is a Friday night edition, and we are in conversation with Mr. Mohamed Dukuly. He joined us from all the way Sydney, Australia, and we are discussing culture. We will go into the importance of culture, but before we get to that, I have one more question. So let's talk about cultural transition and an issue relating to it. So first of all, what is cultural transition, and what are the issues that interplay there?
If you permit me, you made a comment earlier. I want to comment on that, and I'll come to the question.
Okay, go ahead, do that.
Okay. You said what I was describing are symbols, values and beliefs and norms are called components of culture.
Right.
They also have characteristics of culture.
Okay.
Every culture, what is it they're going to have in common? What is the general characteristic of culture? Firstly, those things are very important because understanding them can impact your cultural transition. For example, culture is dynamic. culture is not static. By implication, when you are sitting in New York, when you do something, this is how our forefathers then used to do it. No, you're fooling yourself. This is not their time. They've never been to New York. They're not in that context. You're in a new context, a new culture has to come. Now, what value can we derive from what they were doing that's different from how they used to do it?
Okay.
So culture is the dynamic.
Okay.
Culture is also contextual. You and I now, we're on this show, we're talking like this. There's a culture direct detecting to the way we're doing things.
Okay.
I'm even taking up, asking your permission to go back on something, leaving your question you asked, etc. Because we assume positions here. You the host, I'm the guest. You in charge. Cut me off or whatever. So I need to abide by that and ride according to that. So this is contextual as well. Now, another thing very important is humans make culture. It's humans that make culture.
Make culture.
Yeah. So everywhere we gather together, even now, I'm living here in Sydney. We, the Liberians in Sydney here, our behavior a little bit different from the Liberians in Melbourne. Where you settle, those guys in Philadelphia, they're a little bit different from those guys in Minnesota. It is humans that make culture, and the culture is influenced by the context you're in and their reality.
And I know you use the word context, but can we say their culture is influenced by the environment as well? Is that something you care to comment on?
It's the environment I call the context.
Well, okay. So what are ways that the environment or the context influence culture? Explain that to me.
This is very interesting. I'll give you one practical example.
Yes.
If I had to be back home now as Mohamed Salia, come from a typical traditional Matingo family, or I go to my ancestor or whatever I want to choose, and I said, okay, if I married a woman, automatically it's compulsory for me. It's part of the understanding. I will take her responsibility, feed her, clothe her, give her a place to be, right? In return, with that responsibility, she gives me some privileges back. She take care of the home, she cook. It just assume, it just does a normal thing we do there. Now, okay, the assumption there is that she's doing nothing. She's a housewife. Now we move to Minnesota. She got a job first before me. She got a cleaning job before me. She goes to work and come back. I go my job, go for 8 hours, she go for 8 hours, we come back. Then, even if I want to insist to go back to the default culture we have, the environment itself will not give chance to it.
No, not at all.
Now, very good. That's the beginning of it. That's why you need to understand that culture is dynamic, is contextual. That will help you in your cultural transition. Then what do we mean by cultural transition? It's the way you navigate your way through the reality you live in relation to culture and values and what you want to hold on to.
And the adjustment you made along the way based on the environment and where you find yourself.
Yes, and that navigation you do is what we call cultural transition. Now, it's very, very important for us because it dictates how fast we can integrate, how fast we can benefit from the context society we live in. You can be living, let's say, for example, the analogy I give people. My brother, did you make farming in Liberia before? Did you make
I did a lot of things. I was a farmer, I was a fisherman as well.
Very good. During a holiday, I remember in Bomi, when I live in Bomi, they took us to our farm near River Bridge. We could do corn farm in a swamp.
Right.
We could just plant the corn in a swamp. We could also plant corn not in a swamp, on a dry land. The corn that is planted in a swamp, the way how corn going to survive, the way it's going to use water, etc. If you uproot that corn and plant it in a desert, do you think if it want to live the same way, do you think it's going to survive?
No, it will not survive. Or you have to make some adjustment there to survive.
Very good. So understanding that is one key point for our success in most of the communities we live in outside of Liberia.
Wow. So, folks, are understanding this piece, we will later on in the show try to ask our guests, knowing this culture, knowing the dynamics around culture, can culture be used for development? And that is the one you don't want to miss. Focus on Liberia. This is a Friday night edition, and we are discussing culture. And I told you earlier, culture makes us who we are. Let's get it going. I know you were in transition there, but let me throw this in. Does culture affect how we see things, how we act, and how we behave?
Yes, definitely. And all what we just said is what you summarized in your question.
Okay.
Culture affect how we see things, how we act, how we behave. I'll give one or two examples, and that's gonna be when I'm answering a question of how can we use culture for development, and more will be said there.
Okay.
Yeah. When we were growing up, we have a culture where we from hand to mouth, subsistence farming, right? We all do little. If the day someone's make 3 tin of rice farm, I don't know whether it's the same concept in your area. In Western Liberia, we call it 3 tin. You measure the rice seed in the tin. You say we're gonna scratch the farm. All right. And then you made 14, 15. That's huge. So during that, to do those things at the time, you need a huge family.
Right.
People were married, they were born little children, they will bear little children, they have little children, right? These things were source of labor. Not that they were giving them birth because they want to use them, but because it was part of the process. That you come together, you give birth to little kids, that means a lot of resources. That means you can do bigger farm, you can get extra out of there, you do other things with you. Now, you travel out of there, you come to America. And when you start thinking about your wife is not even able to stay home, she has to go to work. She has stress. She's stressed like yourself. And if you are smart, you think about cultural transition, you think about those things that are involved in bringing up children in the context you live in, you start asking the question, should I have child or not? How many children do I go for?
Right.
What is the purpose? You start asking these questions. So some of these questions you're asking, you're being influenced by your context, by the culture you're in. Back home, no, you want to have them more. Praise you.
Grandma is here. Grandma will take care.
Grandma will take care. And grandma, and you don't have to teach grandma the culture. Grandma knows it. She's a custodian of the tradition and this stuff.
That's grandma role. And in fact, when there's no grandchild, grandma is not happy.
Not happy. Then you come to America, you come and say you want to give birth to a lot of children. Now you see the trouble, the consequences of that.
Wow. Let me show you something here, and then we will ask the question, what are the benefits of valuing, appreciating, and living one's culture with pride and deed? And this, I'm showing on the screen here, is in line with the question I asked before the question. Okay, so culture affects perception, and then you spoke on that. And the examples you are giving, that's so provocative. So there's a lady that is dressed in a certain way, and someone's saying it's provocative. But then there's another lady that is dressed in a certain way. Isn't that too much clothing? Must be uncomfortable? So it just explained the answer you just gave. Depending on your culture, where you are, you see things differently. Yeah. So then let's just go to the question I asked earlier, talking about what are the benefits of us appreciating, valuing, our culture. What are the benefits in it?
Okay. Before getting that, let me make a quick comment on that photo. So what is really influencing those people is not only the symbols, also the values that they hold.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also influencing them, how they define those things.
Okay.
Now, the issue of how do we appreciate our culture? I'm saying go back for one step back. Ask yourself, why do we need to appreciate understanding of culture? If you don't understand your culture, you go until you want to value your culture, like most of people do, become fanatic. Right? Then we become people who, these are the people, even in meetings, you go to, the context is different. They're telling you, I mean, you're following culture. This is not the right culture. Even most of the domestic violence thing that happen is because of people misunderstanding of what culture is and their desire to value what they think their culture is. That brings about domestic violence sometimes. So it's not about valuing your culture. It's about valuing the understanding of culture and its application.
Wow. Wow. This is interesting. All right, folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. My name is Anthony C. hosting, and we are in conversation with Mohamed Dukuly, a gentleman who lives all the way in Cindy, that is Australia. He joined us here, and we are discussing culture. And for your information, we try to define culture, how culture affects our perception. We also talk about how culture influences our behavior. First of we're also able to try to define culture, but he said, well, you can't define it, you can only describe it, because if you attempt to define it, there are a lot of things that will be left out. So we said, well, can we actually define culture? And he said, no, you can't define it, you can only describe it. And then we talk about, why do we even have to discuss culture? And we dealt with that. And right now, where we are discussing, why should we value our culture? And he just nailed that. Now, this is the interesting piece now we are coming to. Knowing why we know about culture, how important is this culture that we can we use culture for national development?
Yes, and thank you very much. In fact, it is that question from you on the flyer that really opened my eyes on a lot of things recently about culture, and I'm very grateful to you for that. When you ask that question, I said, in fact, that question should be asked, and I started looking for an answer for that. And I came across the work of Professor Gerrit Hofstede, Hofspede.
Right.
Now, what he's done over the years, and since in the 70s to just recently, January 2020, he passed away. What he's done over the years, he worked along with anthropologists and sociologists and social psychologists to understand what's been the challenges of every society before. So they realized that every society that passed before has got its own challenge. And those challenges, they come from one generation to another generation, from different society to different society. Now, the way each society responds or addresses these challenges is rooted in the way their culture is, in the way in the values they have and the beliefs they have.
Okay.
So in short, before answering your question, it's important to know that every society has got certain challenges that they need to solve all the time. Initially, they identify 4, they increase it to 6, probably it's still going to keep going. And these challenges, the way the society responds to these challenges is predicated upon, or is being influenced by, the value system and the cultural dimension they have. Now, some of these challenges got to do with, for example, how does the community or society deal with inequality? Inequality does exist everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah, in all cultures.
Okay. How does one community deal with it? How do one community deals with it in relation to other community? So he came up with something they call power distance. The concept called power distance. They wanted to measure it, to make it a science, to measure it, to see how do you compare 2 countries to know how to deal with inequality, to understand their culture. So those 6 things I will go through one at a time. I will take my time, each one. I will say something. You ask a question. We'll move on to the next one. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, let go.
Okay. So the first thing is inequality. So to measure that, they came up with a concept called power distance. The power distance is the extent to which people in a given society expect and accept inequality in their society.
Okay.
So he said, if the small is a small power distance, if people are very strong and the more people accept it, he said it's a small power distance, right? The less people accept it, or the less people accept it is a small power distance. The more people go against it is a strong power distance. I give you an example. Let's link that to Liberian context. It's inequality in our society. The cultural orientation, the values we have. How do we give credence to individuals in our society? When you're a big man.
Yeah, hold on there. Liberia will be a good example because we are too far apart, right? The way we see our leaders, we see them as gods, right?
Yes.
So there's a huge difference there.
Okay.
So given that distance, they are all the way up there. We put them up there, and we are more like nowhere, right?
That's the large power distance.
That's the large power distance
culture. Yeah, they call it large power distance culture.
Is he saying that approach, that understanding, that way we look at it and approach it
is a culture by itself and influence?
It's a culture by itself, and it will help to determine how we solve the problem we have, especially with inequality.
No, not determine how we solve it, but determine the way we respond to inequality.
Okay.
For us, we've reinforced inequality. And no wonder there's more inequality in our community, in our societies. We've reinforced it. That's our response. And you respond to something based on what you have. Something we responded to very well, some things we responded to in a different way. And sometimes we have contradictions. Originally, was that our culture originally? When you were coming up in the 80s, in the 70s, traditionally you go back in the villages, are people far apart this way?
No, I mean, we're very close.
Very close
to each other.
So the paramount chief, the head of the village, the head of your clan, was he like demigod? No. So what have changed? As I said again, culture is dynamics. Things have changed based on the context we live in. Now, before even you ask me, I will tell you, you need to start thinking, what is the importance of this kind of discussion? Is to trigger our thinking about the way we look at things in society. The moment we change the way we look at it, we can change culture. We are now like a fish. When you're swimming in the water, you won't see the water. I can in the 80s, maybe 1983, 84, when breakdance was in style, when we used to dance breakdance in a club, people would be there smoking. Nobody got time for that. It was even cool. The Marlboro was even cool, right? When people start changing their minds against it, what happened? The culture changed.
The culture changed.
So when we talk about, we have
I understand that even here in the US, many years ago, right, early 70s and late 80s, people used to smoke on the plane, but they cut that off.
Very good. Oh, you look like being in the state for long, eh?
No, I've been here 12 years. That's a long time, though.
Congratulations. Okay. So we have a large power distance. We don't hold people accountable. We don't attempt to reduce the inequality. We reinforce it. Everybody, we say we have a lot of slogans that reinforces that completely. We say, look, everybody for themselves, go for all.
Right.
You know who I am? You know who I am?
Yeah.
You know who you're talking to?
Yeah, you know my name. Yeah. And the people in power, it's like we have to call them honorable.
Honorable, and this, that. In my country here, where we are, the prime minister, they call the prime minister by the first name. They value that more than when you say honorable or sir.
Right.
They do that.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing here in the US. You know, I mean, I never heard a word His Excellency all along I've been here. I've had the opportunity to meet speakers, And when you reach there, you just say, Madam Speaker or Mr. Speaker, that's it. But in Liberia, I mean, you have to say Honorable Speaker. You have to say His Excellency.
In Australian context, the speaker, the president, the prime minister, you just call the prime minister by the first name, and unless it's a formal context, whatever they're talking about. So we have a large power distance. So that that's a national culture. That's a part of a national culture.
And so what we're going to do here, I'm not continuing. What we're going to do, we're going to discuss one because we have to try to make this a series, and it'll be a late night series. Okay. Here. So let's deal with only this one because of time. You understand? I think our audience are enjoying it. So let us get this one, clear. Then next time we can get to the other one. So you can continue on with how using a large power distance. How can we, with that understanding, approach development?
Okay, first of all, let me give 1 or 2, 3 examples in different areas on power distance. In a large power distance society, the head gives the order. People take the order. There's no creativity, no innovations, because you do that, definitely they're gonna hit it down, and you don't even attempt to do that. So wherever a leader stops, everything stops. Even our community organization, little community organizations we have, in large power distance organizations like that, the decisions are made in the background. The guy coming with a lot of things is concluded already. in a small power distance, he coming open, he put it there, your debate. It will flip. But this guy's gonna do all the guys will do in the background. Those guys who are benefiting from our culture, they will come in the background, they do all the background deals and discussions and agree. You already get the outcome of the meeting before you come to meeting. And the person will be insisting on something, even with all the evidence shown to them. They will insist, no, my man. I mean, you can't see anything like that. Nothing is there. It just,
So, and when a decision comes down, right or wrong, everybody just accept it because they feel that it comes from the top, it has to be right, and then they play along.
Even though some people are going to go and rebel later. Anybody who is rebelling, you call troublemaker.
So relating it to the development and owing to the fact that most African countries are lacking behind in terms of development, how can we attribute that to our culture? Or in other words, is our culture, like a stumbling block here, why we are not developing as fast as we should?
Oh, I can't say that of 100%. I want to be careful for saying that, but I can definitely say it has some part to play in it because of the way we approach inequality. We reinforce inequality. You see someone, ordinary person among us, a person become secretary, person become assistant minister, is that the next day he build big mansion and nobody can ask him. In fact, we praise him, we dance for them. We dance for them. I remember one time in Nigeria, I was in Abia State. There's a guy who came there. People were mocking the guy. So the guy came from Abuja. He had some sort of directorship, and he didn't build any house in his home. He said this guy finished. He said they telling the guy, this guy no sacrifice hold on him. He cursed. How can you hold government position? You don't benefit. You don't come out of it for nothing. You didn't big mansion at home. All these things. So even the expectation. Because that guy's supposed to live like demigod, mini god now in his own society. Because he held position. Because he's a leader. Then now, to discuss this thing, when you raise the concern, when it comes to the people consciousness, then we can start being conscious of it. We can question them. We can start thinking on how to do it differently. That could trigger development. That's the purpose.
And I like the answer. I mean, there's the example you gave about Nigeria. I mean, what's about Liberia? I knew a gentleman. Listen, I knew a gentleman. I was teaching in a school. He was the principal. And when the transitional government of Judy Bryan came in, luckily for him, he had a friend who made a way for him to be assistant minister of education. And he got a car. And the transition government was just for 2 years. He worked in government for 2 years. So, I mean, he was just assistant minister for education, I think for instruction. So after the 2 years, he didn't get to maintain the job because there was a new government and he was not considered. He had a little used car. It broke down. And the students were the first one that started mocking him. He went back to the school where he was teaching as principal. He went back to LJ, he wanted to be principal. And I was still in that school, and the students said, wow, look at this man. Whole minister, he come back to do this principal job. And he not even having a car anymore. He walking by land. So, tell me about that.
So, sir, you see the perception? Mm-hmm. You see how the beliefs is influencing their feelings and action. So to work against that, they need to be educated. You tell them, sometimes they call it psychosocial education. Mm-hmm. You tell them how their mindset is impacting their behavior and the way they do things. Yeah. Now, tell me, when that man gets another job, what are you gonna do?
That man gonna take the wrong path.
Take the wrong path.
I think he tried to be honest.
The society's sanction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the society, you make your culture. You can change your culture if you want to. So no one should tell us this is our way of life. No. At the time, it was your way of life a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. When you become aware of it, your way of life could change because your mindset starts changing.
And if that way of life is limiting us from living a better and fulfilling life, then we have to make change, because you said it earlier that we human make culture. The culture does not make us.
We human being make culture. Cultures don't make us. And it's very funny when you see some people really holding on to something. This is our culture. What is that culture? What is it? So, wow. Yeah.
And let's come to something as every nation needs an identity. And there are two things we will be talking about. We'll talk about in the final segment. I mean, I enjoy the development part of it, right? But let's talk about identity. Can the culture or a nation culture or a group of people let's talk about nation at this time. Can a nation's culture be the sole catalyst for their identity? And if they don't have that, is there any danger?
You know, when you have people debating on identity, it can look very funny. You already have an identity. Mm-hmm. The fact that you call yourself Liberian, you have an identity. Mm-hmm. It's in your mind, it's in your head. Identity is not something to say is a picture. Mm-hmm. It's if you make believe that's how you are. So we belong to Liberia, particular context we're in, and this is who we are as Liberian. That's our identity. Identity just means something you've been known by. But identity, to become identity, is come from within you. Someone cannot ascribe that to you easily. It's about who you are. It's from within first.
And so what happens when that group of people not valuing and not appreciating that identity that they have? What happens?
As I said to you before you value something, you got to understand it. Mm-hmm. People have misunderstanding of culture, or definition of culture, or understanding how culture is. The moment you get that understanding, then you value it. For example, I'll give you, this is a live personal story I'll tell you now.
Okay.
Until June last year, mm-hmm. I am a proud Mandingo from Tusus, Kwaduboni district of Lufa County, and born in Suamaka district. I grew up speaking Pele and Vai. And the kind of Pele we call Bukulu Pele, mixture of Mandingo, Vai, and Gula. Maybe you've not heard about it or something like that. Okay. No. Then, when someone asks me, who are you? My name is Mohamed Dukuly. I'm Mandingo. But if I don't speak the language part of that culture, why is it? Right.
People might not believe you.
then yeah, no, whether I speak another language or not, it's the fact that my name is that, you're going to tell me I'm Matingo. I said, but this is Matingo is my identity then.
Right.
Like I speak the language. Then I started speaking the language. From last year, June till now, I actually have official program on the radio called Grand Konya, where I discuss concepts, psychosocial concepts in my language. And that is my identity. I feel proud of that. And the moment you understand it, you accept it, it gives you a boost your self-esteem. The reason why it boosts your self-esteem, three things happen. And everywhere I speak, I mention those three things. Everywhere. Even next week you bring me, I'll mention them again. Those three things are like this. One, you're going to have sense of belonging. And those three things I'm going to need, they're part and parcel of your human needs. If you take any one of them out of human, you don't fool. Because human is not just your physical body, it's also your internal, your perception, etc. So you're going to give you sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging, that's one.
Sense of worth.
Sense of worth.
Yeah. And then sense of hope.
I like that. In Liberia, this sense of belonging, this sense of identity, you said, right? And this sense of worth. Do we have that in us as Liberians? Most of us, do we have it or do we not?
Look, we all have that in us as Liberian. People, they just don't consciously lay their hands on it. But we all have it.
We all have it.
There's something about Liberia. I bet you, if you play the national anthem here, there's some kind of physiological reaction that's going to happen to you. You belong to that. Now, this is why discrimination, it becomes very, very hurtful. When someone look at you now, or we say you crew, or someone you're not from here, maybe you're from Ghana. You're from Ghana.
It's hurtful.
They're tearing some part. So for someone like me, Mohamed Dukuly, just by name, and you tell me you come from Guinea,
right?
You see how hurtful it will be.
Yeah, it will be painful.
You in America, you become American citizen. You feel you belong there. Then someone said, no, you're not part of this. So now you see how all linked. But people
and it's painful. Let me come in. You will continue. I'm not cutting you off. So it's like here in the U.S., some of us who acquire U.S. citizenship, we know that whatever we do, we can fit here. And then, though our family members accept us, but sometimes when we try to go to Liberia, come to politics, say, oh, that man guy is American citizenship. Why are you putting more in our politics? Really? You and myself from the same town, and you're telling me that I don't belong? So I'm here, I'm not 100% accepted. That is hurtful. And then I try to go to my own people to say, whoa, because you did this there, you're not one of us. So I can relate to why you're saying that.
And in fact, if even beyond what you're saying, that one is a lesser one. You made a conscious decision to come to America. Do you have a child in America?
Yes, I do. I have a son here.
Did you negotiate with them, consult them before coming to America?
No.
Okay, you give birth to them in America. They belong to America. When they feel what you feel in America is hurtful more than yours, triple times.
Wow.
That's what happening to we generations.
Wow.
Okay, so when you no, it's good to get into it. Yeah. So
let me bring the other component in, Mr. Dukuly.
You want to take some comments? I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to get to comments because we almost done with our time. Let me ask the last question. Patriotism is that thing that kind of bring us to be one, that spirit of oneness, that we belong to this particular place. We are this one group of people that share, common values and norms, that patriotism. Is that something our culture help to influence, or does our culture connect us to the one thing called patriotism? And before you answer, you talk about comments. Let me read some comments and you come to that. So keep that. Folks, let's read your comments here quickly. Let's read your comments here. Then I will bring my guest in. Let me read your comments here. Let's look at this one. Marie Pade, good evening. Good evening, Marie, and thanks for joining us here in the late night edition. JJ Sako Senior, Mr. C, please pronounce our country name good, yeah? Good to see you, my prezo on. Mr. C, how do I pronounce it? Guys, the person is saying I'm not pronouncing the name good. How do you pronounce it? At least I can pronounce or sing it well,
No,
right?
no, is Sydney is complaining about. You have to say
Yeah.
Sydney.
Oh, sing it. But no, I think that
And then
Australia, I'm not pronouncing it well. That's why the
Australia,
person is
Australia and Australia,
Australia. Thank you.
Australia.
Australia. Oh,
Mm.
thank you. I learned better way to pronounce it. Australia. All right. This is Amen K. Shalif II. Culture is the anchor of the rest of life, values, and meaning. Every civilization has its own beliefs, values, philosophy, norms, artifact, language, and system of life. I love that. That is loaded right there. And this is from Ami again. I agree with the guest that culture is indefinable because culture is an umbrella term describing a whole host of social behavior, institution, collective, and societal intellectual achievements, norms, etc. Oh, this guy need to come and focus on Liberia for us to talk some sense here.
That's it.
Yeah. This is from G. Cephas. Culture may change for the good or for the bad. Oh, my man, take note. Oh, culture may change for the good and for the bad. I want to hear that how bad it can change. This one is from Lamadine. Sorry if I'm butchering your name here. I will say no. We should accept. I think meant to say accept one another. I mean each other. Practice what we preach. All right, another one from the same viewer here. Hi, everyone. Greeting from Sydney, Australia. See, now I can pronounce the word well. So yeah, these are just few comments, and you get. Oh, let this one here. Let me put the one on the screen. From Ame again. How does culture relate to tradition? That is a question for you. So quickly come in.
All right. In the first place,
Mhm.
it's great that you say you're going to bring Hamed on. Hamed is my teacher.
Okay.
So, but there are wonderful people there. JJ
Mhm.
who said you should pronounce Australia well.
Mhm.
He's one of the more active Liberian politicians in Australia.
Oh,
And
okay. I run the hour of politics here. Let him come too. We can connect him. Yeah. So we can talk some politics from all the way Australia.
all right. So no, if we want to talk about Kukumis, you call him
Mhm.
man. And then what's Susie Ramadan? How are you? My big sis from the same city here. Okay. Now, for your first question, the first question you asked, what was it before this? Before Hamid's question?
Wow, talking about patriotism. How does
Patriotism.
culture,
Mm.
connect up to this one thing called patriotism?
Now, you see, when I talk about sense of worth,
Hmm.
to be worthy is to give out something that is
Hmm.
going to be appreciated from you.
Right.
It's give, then taken with
Right.
appreciation, and become
Hmm.
worthy. Patriotism is not, if you look at patriotism from a collective perspective, you become extremist. You take patriotism from individual perspective. It's our individual sincere sacrifice and commitment we want to do for the goodness of where we belong to.
Hmm.
And when you put a cumulative impact of that on my side and your side and Hamer's side, everybody's side, then it becomes a very strong society we live in. So in that way, I will not embezzle, I will not steal, because I want to defend my country. So it's not about taking arm to stand up. So but what do you do that can make that place worthy of living in as a society for people to live in? When do I sacrifice? When do I stand up for the truth? When do I do the right thing? How can I work? How can we have a country where, if you remember, I still remember in bombing, some of the places we used to see 1983, 84, where the road was cracked. You go back there now, the road still cracking, the same place, the same way. Nothing improved. It only strength.
Hmm.
You see that, and you don't. That does not propel you into action. You're not patriotic. So tell someone you're foreigner, you did that, that's stupidity. That's not part of patriotism.
Wow. Folks in cyberspace, you're watching Focus on Liberia. I'm Anthony here hosting. This is a Friday night edition here at Focus on Liberia. My guest is Mr. Mohamed Dukuly, who joined me from all the way Sydney, Australia. All right. And let me ask my final question here. Culture shapes our personalities. Explain it to us. How does that happen?
Let me give you one example very clear. Recently, I was working with some people from a particular cultural background from Iraq. The people, I don't want to call a culture name here because I have clients in there, and they were brought to the country as a result of the massacre carried on by the ISIS, and so they came here as refugees. So I've been assigned to work with the segment of that community in one local area of New South Wales. Now, those people, one of them told me part of their culture is that they have to be among themselves. They need to value themselves, be among themselves, work together. For someone else to come in, they can't tell someone their own issue, they're proud people. They got to be proud of themselves. They don't go out, they're very inner looking, not outer looking. Now, we're discussing, we say, okay, if that's how you're doing, but you're not on that land anymore, you're on different land. And on this land, there's different contexts. In different contexts, get different way of doing things. Right. You still want to continue that way, or you want to change what you want to change. So the point I'm trying to make is that culture shapes you and your personality. So whatever culture you take, if you come in a culture that is very liberal, value system are very liberal, you're going to be a liberal person. Young people who come from America, who goes back to Liberia to become ministers, etc. You see how people access them is different from somebody who has never been abroad. But the society you live in influences you. Now, the people have that again in the neuroscience. It said, you see the brain we have, it grows and responds according to how, how the water, when you pour the water on the ground, it go like this, it navigates the way through things, it go around things, the brain grows like that. When you're in a very stimulating community or society, it stimulates the brain grow in that direction. It becomes sensitive, it becomes stimulating, it becomes active, and etc. If you grow in a society that is not that way, but it's full of violence, and you need to go for safety, the brains become dull. So they impact your capacity to even think. Wow. So that's how culture affects us too, as people.
All right.
Now, my last point on that, that's why when you understand what culture is, it can now make you very flexible. You understand everywhere, every context requires its own way of doing things, right? So they have national culture, individual culture, they have family culture. So even in your own village, they have culture for the village. But when you go in your house, there's your own culture there. Someone talked about tradition. Yeah, tradition is the one going beyond custom. We usually do this, we custom to this, and then it becomes a tradition. We carry on and on. Yeah.
Thank you very much, folks. I'll bring you some advertisement here about shows that are coming up. Let's see the first one here. Tomorrow, Saturday, is already Saturday in Sydney. Those of you who are watching us from all the way Australia, we will have Mr. Hassan Bility, or his Musa Bility. Musa Bility will be our guest here at Focus on Liberia. That will be 6 p.m. Liberia time, and it will also be 1 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. Mr. Bility has just been elected as chairman for the Liberty Party, but there has been a lot of mixed reactions with his election as chairman of that party. There have been a lot of accusations Mr. Ability has agreed to sit with Focus on Liberia tomorrow so that he can be able to provide clarity on these concerns, on his new position and the road ahead for the Liberty Party. You don't want to miss that. Also coming to Focus on Liberia, on next Saturday we'll have a footballer turned politician, now senator, that is Mr. Jonathan Segbe, the guy you knew before as Bocha. Bocha has been elected senator for River G County, and Bocha will be sitting with Focus on Liberia next Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 6 p.m. GMT. Bocha will be here, Senator Jonathan Segbe, footballer, politician, senator. He will be here. In observance of Black History Month, Focus on Liberia is bringing you some history. We will have Dr. George Click here, who will give us the history of Liberia's president from Joseph Jekin Rabot to George Weah. That is the political history, how these guys got elected and what they were able to do during their term of leadership. Then we will also have Josiah Joker. He is an election practitioner, and he will also give us the history of elections in Liberia from J.J. Rabot to George Weah. And you do not want to miss it. But Josiah Joker will come first. That is, he will be here on Sunday. Yeah, he will be here on Sunday, and you do not want to miss it. And then the following Sunday, we'll have Dr. George Click here. You do not want to miss it here at Focus on Liberia. If you ever miss it, I guarantee you, go to YouTube and just type Focus on Liberia. Our YouTube channel is there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when you do, you will get notification for all our shows, and you will be able to follow. For the most part, this is how my guests here have been following our program, so you can make use of that. And let me show you something else. Another way you can follow our show is Facebook. Of course, don't forget to like our Facebook page. When you do, you will get notification whenever you are live so that you can follow our program. Because here I Focus on Liberia, we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. This is our website. Our website is focusonliberia.net. If you go on our website, it's another way that you can follow our show. Here where you see live shows, if you click here, it will take you to all of our shows that we've been doing. We have more than 400 interviews and shows and series that we've done. You will have the chance to watch all of that. And if you ever want to appear as a guest here on Focus on Liberia on our website, just click here, contact. When you click contact us, and then you come right here, put your name, your email, the subject, what you want to talk about, or if you just want to be a guest to talk about a particular subject, just put a message here and hit submit. We will get that and we'll be able to reach out to you. So that will do it for advertisement here. Let me come back to my guest for us to conclude this. But man, I don't want us to end this thing, but every good thing must come to an end, because I think we're going to keep doing this. They will not be the first and last. Get Amen for me. Maybe he can join us in the next segment so that the three of us can have a wonderful conversation on this very important topic. Your parting comment.
Parting comment would be, firstly, let me thank you, and let me thank the audience for watching, and thank you for hosting me. This should be the beginning of a long conversation. And the goal here is to bring to our consciousness the whole definition of what culture is, a whole description of what culture is. Then when we're acting, we're saying, we're doing, we know we are acting, saying culture, and we'll be mindful how we do it in a way that it can help us to become better functional members of the society.
Well, you heard a word there. To be a better and functioning members of our society, we must know who we are. The only way we can know who we are is by knowing our culture, because the culture makes us who we are. And we understand the dynamics of culture. No, life will be a little easier for us because we'll make the necessary adjustment. Because according to our guests, from what we learn, we even make the culture. So we shouldn't say, oh, my grandfather did it like this before, but your grandfather was in the village. Now you're in the city. You have a lot of streets. lies and everywhere. You still want to be able to take the palm oil and put it in the mortar and beat it when you could just go in the store. It doesn't mean you are losing your culture. You're just trying to adapt. That's the transition our guests talk about. Beautiful topic, focus on Liberia. It's the only place you can get this because we bring you diversity on the issue so that we as a people can be better informed, because when we are better informed, we will be able to make the right decision to better our lives. That is why we are called Focus on Liberia. And that is why we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We have a song here. Earlier, we were talking about patriotism. We're talking about national identity. We have a song that says we are all Liberians. And that song embodies who we are, unite us together, and also reflect on our ugly past, the war. Listen to it 1 minute. The next time you see me again, you will say thank you. Bye-bye. And that song is free. Thank you, Mr. Dukuly. I appreciate you. Let's do this again. I will let you know. And let's get amen. Let us do let's educate our people. That's the best contribution we can make.
Thank you very much. Very grateful for your time. And thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We all love you.